Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're looking into some really fascinating stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The teachings of Bahá'u'lláh.
Yeah.
And what's really got me intrigued is how the source material presents this. Not just as like a collection of good ideas, but a potential answer to some of the world's biggest problems. It even goes so far as to suggest that they might be the fulfillment of ancient prophecies. Like a remedy for humanity's deepest struggles. What do you think about that?
Well, it's super interesting how the source material emphasizes how urgent this message is.
Right.
Especially when we consider the world today. So much division and, worries about the environment, societal problems. It's like these teachings are speaking directly to the things that are making us anxious.
Yeah, exactly. Like a wake-up call. Like, hey, look around. This is what the world needs right now.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some of these core teachings.
Okay.
And see what they have to offer. Unity is a big buzzword these days. But what makes Baha'u'llah's idea of it stand out?
Well, it's more than just like a nice sentiment, Yeah. Baha'u'lláh actually said that unity is the foundation for peace and security. He even said, the well-being of mankind, its peace and security, are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established.
Powerful words.
So it's not just about avoiding conflict, but about recognizing that we're all interconnected on a really deep level, part of one human family.
So like seeing past our differences and recognizing that shared humanity.
Exactly.
That's a big shift in thinking, especially in a world that feels so divided.
Totally. And this idea of unity kind of flows into all the other teachings. Take justice, for example. The Baha'i Faith sees justice as more than just fairness in the courts. It's about systems that actually allow everyone to thrive. So that means addressing things like prejudice, inequality. It's about ensuring that everyone has access to things like education and healthcare, economic opportunity, all of that.
So not just treating the symptoms, but getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
But one of the claims that's really hard to grasp is this idea of eliminating war. It seems almost impossible in the world today.
Well, it's definitely a bold vision, but Baha'u'lláh didn't just say war is bad. He actually gave us a framework for achieving peace.
Oh, wow.
He imagined a world with a global governing body, universal disarmament, this kind of collective consciousness that goes beyond just thinking about individual nations. He saw these things as essential for the future of humanity.
That's a massive change from how we do things now. I mean, it makes you wonder what that world would even look like.
Right.
And how we could start to even move in that direction.
Well, the source emphasizes that we need to investigate these ideas for ourselves.
Okay.
It encourages us not to just blindly accept them, but to really think about them, research them, and see if they resonate with us.
So it's more than just listening. It's about actively engaging with these teachings.
Exactly.
And figuring out what they mean for us personally.
Yeah, it's like an invitation to go on a quest for knowledge.
I like that. It reminds me of something else the source brought up. Finding that balance between freedom and responsibility. That's something a lot of people are wrestling with today. What's the Baha'i Faith's take on that?
Well, it sees this balance as crucial. It recognizes that individual autonomy is important, but also that true freedom can only exist within a framework of responsibility to others, to the greater good. It's understanding that our choices impact other people and that we have a duty to contribute to the well-being of everyone.
So it's not one or the other, but both.
Exactly.
It's about finding that sweet spot where individual expression and collective well-being come together.
Precisely.
It's a really nuanced perspective that acknowledges just how complex our interconnected world is. This has definitely raised a lot of questions for me, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same.
Yeah.
But remember, this deep dive is just the beginning. We're barely scratching the surface.
Right, just opening the first page of a really interesting book.
Exactly. There's so much more to explore within these teachings.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that have really grabbed your attention so far?
Yeah.
What questions are you wrestling with?
One thing that really stands out for me is how these teachings address the problems of our time. The ones that seem impossible to solve. Like, how do we actually move towards a world without war?
Yeah.
What can individuals and communities do to actually build this kind of global unity?
Yeah, that's a big one. It's one thing to imagine a world without war, but figuring out how to get there,
right,
that's the real challenge.
Exactly. And that's where the real work begins, taking these principles and applying them to the world as it is.
Yeah.
It's about finding practical solutions that bridge the gap between the ideal and the actual.
I'm also curious about the impact these teachings have had on people who follow them. How have they integrated these principles into their daily lives and their communities?
That's a great question. We often focus on the big picture,
Right.
but it's the individual stories that really make these teachings come alive.
Yeah.
We need to see how they translate into real-life experiences.
I agree. It's those personal accounts that give us a deeper understanding of how these principles
Yes.
actually play out in the world.
And that's what's so exciting about this deep dive. We're not just talking about abstract concepts. We're delving into a living tradition that's actively shaping lives and communities all over the world.
Perfect place to pause for a moment.
Right.
When we come back, we'll continue to explore Baha'u'llah's teachings,
Okay.
diving deeper into how they relate to the world today and whether they really do offer a spark of hope
Sounds good.
in these complicated times.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Stay with us.
So, as we were talking before the break, one of the things that really struck me about the source material is how it acknowledges just how much turmoil there is in the world right now, but still manages to be optimistic about the future.
It's like saying, yeah, things are a mess, but it's not all doom and gloom.
Right, exactly.
And I find that so refreshing, especially when so much of the news is just focused on all the negatives.
Yeah, totally. The source material actually uses this interesting phrase. It says the current state of the world is like the birth pangs of a new world order.
Wow.
So it draws this parallel to like the challenges that come with any kind of major transformation.
So it's not about ignoring the problems, but seeing them as part of a bigger process of change.
Exactly. It speaks to the Baha'i belief that humanity is moving towards unity,
Oh.
even if it's not a smooth or straightforward path. And it suggests that Baha'u'llah's teachings can help us navigate these turbulent times.
So like a roadmap to a world of peace and justice.
Exactly.
That sounds great in theory, but how do we actually put it into action?
Right. How do we go from these big ideas to making a real difference?
Yeah.
Well, the source material emphasizes that it starts with each of us changing ourselves.
Okay.
Baha'u'lláh taught that change begins internally by recognizing our own biases, practicing forgiveness, and really trying to live in alignment with those principles of unity and justice.
So looking inward before we try to change the world outside.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about developing those qualities within ourselves that we want to see reflected in society.
Precisely. And it's a continuous process, not a one-time achievement. It requires us to be reflective, to look at our thoughts and actions and challenge anything that contributes to division and conflict.
I'm also struck by this idea that sharing this message is a form of service in itself.
Yes.
It's not just about personal transformation, but about spreading this vision of a better world.
Absolutely. The source material highlights the importance of actively promoting these teachings.
Okay.
Not through proselytizing or forcing beliefs on others, but through sharing knowledge, engaging in dialogue, and finding ways to contribute to the well-being of society. It's about planting seeds of hope and understanding in a world that often feels so broken.
That's a powerful image. It's like saying we don't have to wait for someone else to fix things.
Yeah.
We can all be part of the solution. But for someone who's hearing this for the first time, it might seem overwhelming.
Right.
Where do they even begin?
The source material suggests starting with education. The more we understand these teachings, the better equipped we are to share them and apply them in our lives.
Okay.
It could involve reading Baha'u'llah's writings or engaging in conversations with people from the Baha'i community or even exploring online resources.
So many different ways to learn and grow.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about blindly accepting everything.
Right.
But about critically examining these ideas and seeing how they resonate with our own values and experiences.
One of the most compelling things I found in the source material was this emphasis on the interconnectedness of humanity,
Yeah.
especially in a world that feels so divided.
It goes beyond just acknowledging that interconnectedness. It actually points to real-world examples of unity emerging.
Oh, that's interesting.
For instance, it mentions technological advancements that connect people across vast distances as evidence that we're moving towards a more unified world.
I mean, just think about it. We're having this conversation right now, and someone on the other side of the world could be listening in real time.
Exactly. That would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago.
Yeah.
And these technological advancements are only one part of this larger trend towards unity. We're also seeing greater collaboration across borders, a growing awareness of global issues, and more people committed to social justice and peace building.
So despite all the negativity in the headlines, there are signs of hope and unity emerging.
Precisely. And the source material suggests that Baha'u'llah's teachings aren't just responding to these trends, but actively shaping them.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that we're all part of this collective journey towards a brighter future.
That's empowering. It reminds us that we're not just bystanders.
Right.
We have the power to influence the course of history. But it's easy to get caught up in the negativity.
I agree. We need to be mindful of that negativity bias in the media and actively seek out stories of hope, collaboration, and progress. Those often get overshadowed.
So it's about being selective about what we consume.
Yeah, making sure we're getting a balanced perspective.
But how do we reconcile these ideals of unity and justice with the reality of a world that often feels so divided and unjust?
That's a really important question. The source acknowledges that these are long-term goals that will take generations of effort, but it also emphasizes that progress is possible.
Okay.
And that every act of kindness, compassion, and service brings us closer to that better world.
So it's not about reaching some perfect utopia overnight.
No.
It's about making steady progress towards a world where these principles are more fully realized.
Right. It's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
Yeah.
And recognizing that every step we take towards unity and justice is a victory in itself.
This reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, the importance of individual transformation. It seems like a lot of these teachings are about developing qualities like patience, perseverance, and a willingness to work towards long-term goals.
Absolutely. And these qualities aren't just important for creating a better world.
Right.
They're essential for living a meaningful and fulfilling life. The source suggests that the Baha'i teachings offer a framework for spiritual growth and personal development that can benefit anyone regardless of their religious beliefs.
So these teachings have relevance beyond the Baha'i community.
Yeah.
They offer valuable insights for anyone looking to live a more purposeful and connected life.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that the challenges we face as individuals are often reflections of the challenges we face as a society. And finding solutions to those challenges requires both inner transformation and collective action.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
It has.
And I'm sure our listeners are taking it all in, but I know we're running short on time.
Yeah.
Should we start wrapping things up?
Sounds good to me. We've covered a lot, but of course, there's always more to explore.
Definitely. But before we move on, I want to give our listeners something tangible to take away. What's one action step they can take to explore these ideas further or put these principles into practice in their own lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really gets to the core of what we're trying to do with these deep dives. You know, it's not just about exploring these ideas, but finding ways to connect them to our own lives and actually do something with them.
Right.
So what's one practical thing our listeners could do?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is practicing that principle of unity in their daily interactions.
Okay.
It could be something as simple as, consciously trying to connect with people from different backgrounds.
Right.
Or engaging in respectful conversations, even with people who have different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Or even just being more mindful of the language we use and the assumptions we make about others.
So being intentional about building bridges instead of walls.
Exactly.
Cultivating that mindset of inclusivity and understanding in everything we do.
And all those little acts of unity, when you multiply them across individuals and communities, they can really make a difference.
Wow.
They create a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Earlier, we were talking about how the source material emphasizes that humanity is moving towards unity, even with all the challenges we see. It's a hopeful message, but I think some listeners might have trouble seeing that hope.
Right.
Especially with all the negativity we're bombarded with every day.
Yeah. It's easy to get bogged down in all of that and lose sight of the progress that is being made.
So what are some of the signs that give you hope?
Well, one thing is that there's a growing awareness of how interconnected we all are.
Okay.
More and more people are realizing that the problems we face climate change is inequality and justice.
Right.
These aren't just isolated issues. They affect all of us.
It's a global thing.
Exactly. And that realization is a big step towards building a more unified world.
Yeah, it's like that saying, we're all in this together.
Right.
No matter where we come from or what our background is.
And that awareness is leading to more collaboration across borders. We're seeing international agreements, cross-cultural exchanges, people working together to solve these global problems.
I've also noticed a rise in grassroots activism and social movements.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like more and more people are getting involved and feeling empowered to make a difference.
That's a great sign. It shows that people aren't just sitting around waiting for someone else to fix things.
They're taking action.
Exactly. They're speaking up and demanding a better future.
So even though things might look bleak on the surface, there's a lot of positive change happening underneath.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that progress isn't always this big dramatic thing.
Yeah.
It often happens gradually through the efforts of countless individuals and communities.
It's all those little things adding up.
Precisely.
That's a good reminder. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problems we face.
Right.
But even the smallest acts of kindness, compassion and service can make a difference.
Absolutely. And the Baha'i teachings show us how those small acts can ripple outwards, transforming individuals, communities, and eventually the whole world.
This deep dive is giving me a lot to think about, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same.
Me too.
As we wrap up, what's one final thought you want to leave them with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that hope isn't passive. It's not something we just wait for. Yeah. It's something we create through our choices, our actions, our commitment to building a better world. The Baha'i teachings offer a path, a vision, a set of principles that can guide us.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's up to each of us to decide how we'll contribute to the story of humanity.
That's a beautiful thought. To our listeners, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep looking for those signs of unity and hope.
Yes.
And most importantly, find ways to be a source of that hope and unity in your own lives and in the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep seeking the light